Welcome to the Rotary Club of Milwaukee. I am Club President Darren Miller, President and owner of JM Construction. As we begin the program in person and virtually, we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And now, Pat Cronin, founder and principal of Anam Consulting, will give our invocation.
Thank you, President Taryn. Good afternoon, Rotarians. I'm very happy we have our guest speaker from the Boys and Girls Club. Looking forward to some positive and encouraging news. On the positive side, in my reading, I came across a British researcher named Tim Lomas. And his field is called positive lexicography. Lexicography as in lexicon, the words we use. And he defines his field as identifying and categorizing untranslatable words relating to well-being from across the world, different languages across the world. I've chosen examples from two of the categories that he lists: love and kindness. There you go. Example, love. Ahushla. Ahushla. Devotees of Irish rest may recognize it as a Gaelic word. Okay, my beloved, my darling. But Hushla is actually, the original word is Gaelic for pulse, like our pulse. And when two Irish people say that to each other, that means you're as close to me as my pulse. The Australian Aborigines have a word, patua, expressing love. Best interpretation of it is warming one's hands near the fire while gently squeezing the hands of another. Aloha, we think that means hello, goodbye in Hawaiian. It's actually an expression of love. Literally, it means breath of presence. But when two native Hawaiians say aloha, what they're saying is, you are loved. And from the Urdu language, Pakistan and parts of Afghanistan, nas. It's an expression of love, and it means a feeling of assurance and confidence from being loved unconditionally. Second category is kindness. We go to Thailand for this. Namjai. It literally means water from the heart, and it refers to selfless generosity. In the Philippines, the Tagalog language, they say utang nalu. Utang nalu. It refers to kindness, but more than that, it describes an unrepayable debt of gratitude. And lastly, back to our Aboriginal friends in Australia, they say, Mampa Maruru Maruru. I actually practiced that. Refers to kindness, but their best description is to make someone else's hair beautiful. Let's stay positive. Let's do positive. Remember, aloha.
Thank you, Pat. Now for some club business. Again, extremely happy to have all of you here in person and watching virtually with us on YouTube. As always, we fully expect, regardless of your chosen method of participating, to have a quality experience. To begin, I would like to take a moment to acknowledge the passing last week of Carol James, wife of longtime Rotarian Charlie James. And Mary would like to come up and say a few words.
Good afternoon. And as Darren just said, I want to take a moment to pay some special tribute to Carol and to Charlie James. Charlie is with us here today after losing his beloved wife of 69 years last Monday. We all know that this is an extraordinary time, and the James family was not able to have a public visitation or funeral where they would be comforted by many people in the community who love them and whose lives they've touched. So it's appropriate for us to do something a bit out of the ordinary in this extraordinary time and just take a moment to share a bit about Carol and Charlie. And Carol and Charlie met in her senior year of high school. They married at the ages of 18 and 19, and their love grew over 7 decades. Carol and Charlie were best friends, soulmates, and the love of each other's lives. Together they had 3 children, and now they have 10 grandchildren. And Carol, like Charlie, was a tremendous community supporter. And one of the organizations that is important to both of them is the Boys and Girls Club. And so it's rather synchronistic that our speaker today is Kathy Thornton-Bias, CEO of the Boys and Girls Club. The most important thing in the world to Carol was her family. But as we learned from Charlie, that she also loved and cared for all of God's creatures, feeding all of the animals that came into her yard and rescuing many dogs throughout the years. Indeed, she was a very loving woman. And Charlie, you have been a member of Rotary for 63 years. Not quite as long as you were married to Carol, but you have an exemplary track record of loving deeply, making commitments, sticking to them, and making a difference in the lives you have touched. I consider my friendship with you, Charlie, to be one of the blessings that has come through Rotary. And Charlie, we hope that you feel the love of your friends and fellow Rotarians here today and always.
Thank you, Mary. Charlie, thank you for being here. Our deepest sympathies. After a brief hiatus, our Rotary People of Action feature is back. Barbara Velez has written nearly 40 profiles of fellow Rotarians over the past 2 years, and now we've got a team of 6 people writing these bi-monthly features. This week's profile on Pat Algiers was written by Mary Ballich, so be sure to check that out on your Friday emails. We now have an announcement. John Ferguson, Business Development Director at Findorf and co-chair of the Scholarship Golf Classic Committee, is going to provide an announcement about this year's golf outing.
Hello, everybody. My name is John Ferguson, and on behalf of myself and my co-chairs, Patrick Fennelly and Chris Corley, and our entire Rotary Scholarship Golf Committee, we'd like to say thank you for helping us make 2020 such a great event. We held our outing on August 31st, and were able to welcome 104 golfers and 20 plus additional guests at the reception afterwards. It was a great day with fantastic weather, and we couldn't have done it without the participation and generosity of so many of you. We're really excited to say that this year we were able to raise $55,678, which allows us to extend 4 additional Rotary scholarships, bringing our grand total to 25. So thank you to everyone who participated and everyone who donated. We truly couldn't have done it without you. We look forward to sharing updates on our 2021 Rotary Golf Classic, and we certainly can't wait to get together again very, very soon. We wish you all well. Stay safe. Thanks.
Thank you to John for putting together that announcement. It was a great day, great event, and we're all blessed that we were able to still have that and pull it together for this year. We now have an announcement from Sarah Wilson, co-founder and president of Mays Wilson and Associates. She is also the chair of the Johnson's Park Committee, and she has an announcement about this Saturday's volunteer opportunity with the Johnson's Park Neighborhood Association.
Hello, Rotarians. As you know, Rotary has a long relationship with the Johnson's Park neighborhood. This Saturday, October 10th, the Rotary's Johnson's Park Committee will be joining Johnson's Park Neighborhood Association for their fall cleanup. We hope you will join us. The key facts for you to remember are this Saturday, October 10th, 10 a.m., at Johnson's Park, which is located at the corner of 18th and Brown Street. Social distancing will be enforced, and of course, bring your mask. Go Packers! And all of the tools and supplies that you need will be provided. Hope to see you this Saturday at 10 a.m.
Thank you to Sarah for that. And I'd also like to say that a special thank you to everyone who came out this past Saturday to help clean up our riverbanks. It was a small group, but we were able to make an impact cleaning up the trash around the Arboretum. Hope you can join us this Saturday at the Johnson's Park neighborhood. See the link in your emails for more information and how to sign up. I'd also like to thank everyone who helped support Hike Milwaukee this past week at the Urban Ecology Center. It was great to get out in nature and practice some socially distanced hikes. If there's somebody in your network that you think might be interested in Rotary, we believe this is the perfect time to introduce them to our work and our programming. Consider inviting them to join us at an upcoming Tuesday event or a Thursday snack program, or connect them to share how Rotary has enriched your life. And as a COVID special, all the admission fees are waived for through the end of the year. And finally, if you are joining us via YouTube today, please use the chat function to stream in your questions. And now, Thelma Sias will introduce our speaker for today.
Good afternoon. I'm Thelma A. Sias, CEO of the Sias Group, LLC, and a member of the Boys and Girls Club Board of Trustees. I am delighted to present to the Downtown Rotary Club today the President and CEO of the Boys and Girls Club of Greater Milwaukee, the 15th named President and CEO, Kathy Thornton-Bias, the second woman to be named in this role, the second woman since 1887 to be named in this role. So yes, it is true, Kathy Thornton-Bias has broken through the glass ceiling and created an opportunity of leadership for future generations to come. Kathy comes to us from Saks Fifth Avenue in New York, the New York Museum of Arts, and the former president and chief operating officer of Furlough Mattress. Kathy has come forth in this leadership role to join with other organizations to build credibility and opportunities so that we can all be a part of creating the ability for young men and women dreams to become reality, to be the ones that invest in their future so that with all the rights and privileges needed and earned, that we pass the baton to the future leadership of this community. It is my honor to again present to you the second woman CEO of the Boys and Girls Club, Kathy Bias.
Welcome, Kathy.
So quick note to self, never follow Thelma Sias's remarks. She is always so amazing. Never follow Thelma. But Thelma, thank you so much for that warm welcome, and hello to the Downtown Milwaukee Rotary Club. Someone asked me if I was a Rotarian, and I said to Patrick, I am not, but I do hail from a Rotarian. My father was a member of the Rotary Club in Louisville, Kentucky, where I was born and raised, for 15 years. And in fact, he was one of the first African-American men to be admitted into the Rotary Club there. So I've long been around Rotary. I've long admired what Rotary does. And so thank you for having me here today. I'm going to talk to you about a topic that may seem a little unusual for the Boys and Girls Club CEO, but I hope you get some value from it. And it's this idea of prioritizing purpose in a pandemic. How does one prioritize purpose in a pandemic? The first thing, even when times are tough, and what I like to use is the most overused word in the pandemic, unprecedented, right? Even when times are tough and unprecedented, our stakeholders expect companies and organizations to live up to their stated values. Regardless of what's happening in the world, your stakeholders expect you and your company to live up to its stated values. And the question is, after back-to-back weather events, after social unrest, after, of course, this growing pandemic and whatever else the universe throws at us, what is your company prioritizing? And although the Boys and Girls Club of Greater Milwaukee is, of course, and clearly a nonprofit, we're not immune from the challenges and the tough decisions that for-profit companies are facing and making during this time as well. So over the next 15 minutes or so, I'd like to talk to you just a little bit and bring you behind what we call the Boys and Girls Club curtain and share with you the values that we're prioritizing at the clubs, why they are important, how they will show up in this community that we all care so deeply about. So if there were a hymn book, a hymnal as some people would call them, if there was a hymnal that we were all going to sing from about the Boys and Girls Club, the title of that hymnal would be An Amplified Impact. An amplified impact. Because in order for progress to really be made in Milwaukee, we have to amplify our impact. We have to graduate more kids from high school. We have to get more kids into college and career. So the idea of amplifying impact is really the songbook from which our values come. And the question is, when you have your hymn book or your direction, how do you get there? What's the what? What's the why? And what's the how? Thank you. So in our case, the what is giving kids more of what they deserve. That means we have to have state-of-the-art facilities. We need the materials and the curriculum. We need the outcomes because we think our kids deserve more. In terms of the why, we believe that we're going to need to change direction in order to stay the course. I'll say that one more time. We are changing direction at the clubs in order to stay the course. In order for us to meet the goals and the values and the objectives that we've set out, this time is shaking us back and forth, and we've got to find a more stable and sustainable way forward. And then finally, how? How are we going to do this? You hear a lot, Jim Barry and Charlie and Sarah and others who are here both in person and on YouTube hear us talk a lot about doing whatever it takes to build great futures. Whatever it takes. In the pandemic, we opened a food distribution program and gave out 253,000 meals in 4 months. And we're not a food pantry. That's not our core business. We developed 1,000 hours of online programming, 1,010 in fact. And we were mediocre at digital prior to COVID. And so when you talk about how to prioritize during the pandemic, it's knowing what your stakeholders, your customers need, and going after that. And going after it really hard. And sometimes it has your business stretching and stepping into places that perhaps weren't your normal pathway. But you lean into those gaps, you lean into those holes because you know, running your business, running your organizations, how important those gaps are to your stakeholders. And so this idea of prioritization also takes a little bit of discipline. And for us, that was creating a framework for change. There are about 6 must-win battles that we think about every single day at the clubs. The first is, how can we serve more kids? Many of you are parents. I was talking to Darren when we first met this afternoon. I have 3 sons of my own, millennials. God bless me. But serving more kids, we serve 5,000 kids a day on average at the clubs. That's a lot of little people. But the question isn't to set our laurels and set in our ways. The question is, how do we serve more? How do we get that number to 10,000 kids? How do we get that number to 25,000 kids? What does that look like? So that's a must-win battle for us. Also, delivering higher outcome programming. Someone told me, Jim Clark, who many of you probably know, is our national CEO, and he told me a story about when the clubs were starting in the 70s and 80s. There was a gentleman named Jack McKeithen, who happened to be our former board chair. Many of you probably know Jack. And he fell on the sword for girls to be allowed to come. This is, I think, Charlie, 1984, 85. Girls still weren't being admitted to the Boys and Girls. It was called the Boys Club, in fact. Do you guys remember that? Yes. So sometimes in the course of prioritization, you realize that there's pieces of being a priority that are missing. Girls were missing. And currently, 48% of the kids that we serve are female. That would have been a whole population that we didn't address had we not pivoted and prioritized. Also, this idea of state-of-the-art facilities. Back in the heyday, we have a gentleman named Sam Williams. He has been with the clubs for 49 and a half years. And he tells the story about when he first started as a club manager, the coolest thing that kids wanted was a pool table. And he would get kids to come in from LeVarn Way, 15th and Center, and they would be so excited because there were like 4 nice new pool tables. All right, by a show of hands, how many of you know 10-year-olds that are playing pool right now? That's a 0. YouTube? Nope, that's a 0. How many of you know 10-year-olds that are on their cell phones, their iPads, TikTok, any of that? Pretty much everybody, right? So being state of the art means keeping up with what kids want and what they need to be relevant. Otherwise, we will become irrelevant. Also, must-win battle is operating with maximum efficiency. But this is going to be controversial, so Darren, cover your ears while you're eating. We have an 8% growth in nonprofits in the state of Wisconsin. We've had an 8% growth year over year. Do you think the population of Wisconsin has grown 8%? The answer is no, by the way. I say that to say that although there are many, many great things that nonprofits do around this community, there's a lot of us. And we're all, in some cases, trying to do similar things or congruent things and things that could be patched together to perhaps provide greater outcomes. We have to operate this work more efficiently. The last two, and I would say actually one of the best, is treat our staff like our best and greatest assets. There are 2 reasons why kids come to the Boys and Girls Clubs. One is program. They come for the program. But would it surprise you that they stay for the people? They stay for the people. They have deep connections and trust with the adults that work in the clubs. And so one of the reasons we were able to do online programming so quickly was because our kids were showing up for Mr. Devin or Miss Veronica. They love them. That's their second home. So they were happy to show up online to see their faces. And in fact, when we opened the clubs a few weeks ago for fall service, they came back in droves. But that's because your staff, the people that work for you, that believe in the value of what you're doing, they're your best assets. But you got to treat them like that. And then finally, for me, it's about building a scalable and sustainable model. You heard from Thelma that we are 133 years old. God, don't let me break it. Don't let me be the one that comes in and breaks the secret model. There is a model for this organization. It's been around for 133 years because it's been adaptive, it's been responsive, and it's been relevant. And whether you're running a corporation or a nonprofit, those are elements that we all need to pay attention to. So Kathy, you might say, what's that going to look like? This is a lot of hyperbole. What's it going to look like in the community? 4 things. The first is that we're integrating social and emotional development into every program that we operate. Social emotional development is probably the newest buzzword in youth development. And what it has to do is really dealing with the whole child, but mostly what's inside the child. And unfortunately, in our community, can I be candid? Yes. Unfortunately, in our community, our children are experiencing trauma, the likes of which we've never seen. And while it's probably safer at home for all of us in this room, and many of those of you who are watching on YouTube, we can't assume that safer at home is safer for a lot of the kids in the communities that we work in. You've probably heard from other nonprofit leaders the escalation in suicides and domestic violence and psychiatric transports. All those things are happening, and little kids, they don't get a vote. So social emotional learning is really the starting point for getting kids re-engaged. Second is upstream programming, and all that means is all the great programs, many of which you all support as a Rotary, so thank you. Many of them start in middle school and high school, We start talking to kids about, what do you want to be when you grow up, Kathy, an architect? Or your dad says a lawyer. You know, what do you want to do for college? Do you want to go to school here? Do you want to go away? The problem in that is that for the kids we work with, that's too late. Introducing those concepts to them in high school or even middle school is too late. We've got to start talking about that much, much sooner. I mean, kindergarten. I mean, third grade. If we want to see better outcomes and better participation for college or career for our kids, we've got to start sooner. We've got to start sooner. Third, and one of my favorites, and one of your fellow Rotarians mentioned this idea of community collaborations. Again, a little controversial. Darren said I could. If any one organization in Milwaukee could fix Milwaukee's problems, they would be fixed already. If any one organization had the secret sauce, the magic key, it'd be done, right? So the thought here is that the clubs, as the largest youth-serving organization in the city and the state, is that we are going to extend our arms to the right and the left and partner with other nonprofits, regardless of who gets the money, to serve as kids. Mind blown. Let me give you a couple examples. Well, thank you for the clap. We are working with Junior Achievement, Mike Frona, who I think is a brilliant leader in the community. We're working with the Girl Scouts and Christy Brown, who I think is phenomenal. We're working with All In Milwaukee to get our kids matriculating from high school and through college, not just to college, but graduating and getting through college. And all these are partnerships because we know that we want best-in-class assets for our kids. And if the Girl Scouts are the best at leadership for little girls, I want that for the girls of the Boys and Girls Club. I don't need to go make it up myself. If there's someone in the community, a partner, that does it better. That is mind-blowing for nonprofit thinking, that we would actually collaborate and work together. But it's happening. And dare I say, Charlie and Jim, it's working pretty well. Working pretty well so far. And the last and final thing I'll say in terms of our priorities is that we want to really increase our engagement with the youth who are most at risk. Now, I just came from a microaggression class on racial bias and implicit bias. And this is something that I said, and I'm going to have to stop saying it. At-risk youth is not the way to describe these children. At-risk youth is not the way to describe them. These are beautiful, smart, ambitious, funny young people who want the same dreams and goals that we all had. The risk is if the adults don't show up and do the work. The youth aren't at risk. We are risking the youth by not doing the work that we need to do. These young people have promise. He, she, they are the Milwaukee that we want to see. It's not going to happen on my watch. I'm a little old, Charlie James, these days. I'm above the halfway mark. But I believe with the right foundation, the right structure, the right partnerships, and the right purpose, we can rise to the challenges ahead. We can get it done. But it may not look like it used to look. But we have to get this done. As if our community, our Milwaukee that we love, as if all of that, the stakes are so high, everything is riding on this next generation. And it's not their job to make it happen. It's our job to make it happen. So doing whatever it takes to build great futures isn't just a slogan. It's the air that we breathe at the clubs. It's a trustee who will pick up a call from me on a Saturday afternoon as a non-paid volunteer. It's a trustee that shows up a few days after his wife passes to go do something at one of our locations because he loves the camp so much and the camp loves him so much. It's actually doing whatever it takes, and it's going to be hard. I'm not here to sell you on the pie and the fairies and the puppies. It's hard, but it's doable. It's doable. But we have to be ready to prioritize with purpose at this time and moment. Thank you. Oh.
Excuse me.
Oh, we're going to take some questions, and Charlie loves it when I go off script, so hopefully that was okay, sir. But any questions, anything that I can answer for you about what's going on with Milwaukee's youth? Mr. James.
Mr. James was my father. I'm Charlie.
Charlie.
I just want to tell the group that I've been a trustee of the Boys and Girls Club of Greater Milwaukee as long as I've been a member of Milwaukee Rotary, and we've never had a director who's better than Kathy, and she does a great job, and I just want to tell her how much I appreciate her and what a great job she's doing. Okay.
Thank you, Charlie.
Okay. I wonder what are the strategies you use to help children envision a better future for themselves, guide them in those directions. Specifically, how do you do that?
Thank you for the question. There's an old saying that if you can see it, you can be it, which just means that if you're exposed to something or have the experience of something, you can then have the imagination for something and perhaps do that something. So many of you know Senator Hope Cole, who's been a longtime supporter of the clubs. One of the things that he is very focused on is having our kids have experiences, both within Milwaukee and outside of the state. Could you imagine that we take busloads pre-COVID, there's pre-COVID and post-COVID, pre-COVID, busloads of kids to Discovery World? Would you imagine that half of the school bus of kids have never seen the lake? They have no idea what it is. So how can you imagine something that you've never seen or experienced? When we talk about kids getting jobs in the summer, we're one of the biggest employment placers of young people in the summer. Showing up late to work isn't something that you just kind of do. We know that. But if you've never been taught that or you've never seen that, how would you know that? So the answer quickly is experience and education. Those two things unlink possibilities infinitely. Thank you for the question. Yes, Mike.
One of the things in the inner city that we seem to have missed is the ability to earn some money. And all of us had that opportunity when we were kids, whether it was shoveling snow or whether it was selling newspapers or, in my opinion, scrap during World War II. How do we set up something so that kids have an opportunity to earn some money that's theirs without violating all the laws? It may be, I set up a little program like that. I ended up with 74 kids in 2 days, but I was breaking every law there was. So why have we got these laws that prevent urban kids from earning money?
Sarah Kimball, we're not breaking laws at the Boys and Girls Club, right? No. So quick answer to your question, Mike. Number one, I believe that you need to eat your own cooking. Before you serve it to someone else, you need to test what you're cooking. And so part of the way that the clubs really expands on employment opportunities for kids is by hiring them to be junior coordinators, leaders, at the clubs that they grew up in. Imagine that, you've got your 16-year-old sister working at the club. She's been a club member since she was maybe 7. And now her little brother is there seeing his big sister work at the club. We eat our own cooking. So the first place that a kid would want to work, I would hope, would be the Boys and Girls Clubs. We have a huge alumni pipeline, and we hire many of our former staff out of alumni pipeline. So that's number 1. Number 2, again, back to the idea of community partnerships. Employ Milwaukee has made a really concerted effort, and particularly under the new director, that kids need to work. They need to know what work means, what it looks like, how hard it is. It's not on their terms. When you're supposed to be at work at 5, you're supposed to be there at 4:45, getting your uniform on and getting ready. And so they've made a commitment to young people working. And I would say, arguably, when I've talked to Tim Sheehy at MMAC and other groups like that, we need a bigger workforce in Milwaukee. There's so many industries that will tell you they are desperate to hire. And not all of them require a college degree. I was learning from one of our board members at We Energies, Thelma knows this as well. There's a job called being an arborist, and you get up on the truck and you cut the limbs off the tree branches so they don't fall on the power lines. It's a $40,000 a year job, and you don't need a college degree. I don't know what you guys are making out of college, but it wasn't $40,000 for me. It's a good job. And so part of it is getting kids aware, again, that experience of what's possible. And then we, the clubs, start giving them those soft skills really, really early so that when they come of age, they're ready to do that.
This is kind of an inside baseball question. I don't want to embarrass anybody, but I'm on a number of small boards. I had the privilege of being a guest at one Boys and Girls Club board meeting. It was like a small city. I'm just curious how you manage with the large group that comes to those board meetings and what the interaction is really like.
That's not hard to answer. Let's see. I only have 3 or 5 or 6 trustees here. We do have one of the larger boards in Milwaukee. And I hope I can speak, frankly, for Sarah and Jim and Charlie. It's a working board. They work. They work on special projects. They work on fundraising. They work on making opportunities available to the clubs. It is a working board that's very much based on a committee system. When I took the job, we had 17 different committees, I believe, Jim, something like that. We now have 6 and an executive committee. We had 63 board members about, and we're just at about 50 now. But this is the most powerful active board, I believe, in the city. And we have benefited greatly from that. Can it be hard to have 50 bosses? Sure. But the work far overshadows and outweighs the complexity, of the organization.
I have a couple of questions here that have come through the YouTube, so I'd like to share those. First is from Chris Holmes, and Charlie, she extends her sympathy to you and your family. But she asks, how has COVID affected the Boys and Girls Club's ability to keep staff employed, and how has remote learning affected the ability to help children?
It's a great and complex question. 3 things to know about virtual learning. It requires technology, which includes computers, headsets, and hotspots. It requires a tremendous amount of focus for little people. And 3, it's really costly in the schema of COVID in terms of all the PPE. So our cost per unit, per child, has gone up 3.5 times in 6 months. I'm not sure how many companies could absorb that kind of increase to their expense line, but 3.5 times. However, it's also presented an opportunity for us to open the clubs from 7 in the morning now until 6 at night and offer basically a place for kids to come with their laptop, or we'll give them one and their curriculum for the day, and we get them on learning, feed them breakfast, lunch, and dinner, so mom and dad can go to work. I think for some people it's not clear, like, how do we restart an economy in Milwaukee and mom and dad or grandma has to go to work? If she doesn't go to work, she doesn't get paid. If she doesn't get paid, she doesn't pay her rent. Doesn't pay her rent, she gets evicted. Like, this is a domino effect. So again, my board has given me great runway to get over my skis with this in terms of the financials, but there's not a way around this right now. And we just learned, Sarah and I were talking, that that kids are going to be virtual indefinitely now in the district. Indefinitely. That's not a good recipe. Yes, sir.
A number of years ago, I had the good fortune to attend a fundraising dinner down at the Pfister, and also it was a commemorative dinner. I had the even better good fortune to hear the late, great Marty Stein speak. Marty said something that night that I have shared with many people. He said, children are only 20% of our population, but they represent 100% of our future. I assume that's still your mantra.
That should be a t-shirt. That's amazing. So for those of you who knew Marty, he was a member of our board of trustees for many, many years. His sons continue to be involved in the clubs. And Marty was really a thinker that got ahead, because he said, look, it's not just enough to get the kid to college. Who's going to support that first generation student to get through college? And so the Stein Scholars was set up for that particular purpose. It was pretty groundbreaking in its time. Now we know that first gen students need a lot more support and help to get through college, but he was really a trailblazer in that effect.
And Chris Holmes also asked, how has the COVID affected your ability to keep staff fully employed?
Oh, this is like hardball now. Okay, well, many of you might not know that we are the largest Boys and Girls Clubs organization in the country, like actually in the United States, which is amazing to me. We employ on a regular basis about 1,200 employees, 75% of whom are part-time. In the summer, that number goes up to about 1,500. So we're running a medium-sized company, really. The biggest obstacle for us is our size. We didn't qualify for any PPP money. Like, imagine that for a moment. Zero. And so the fact that we haven't had any permanent layoffs, we've had furloughs for sure, and we've brought all but I think 100 or so people back from furlough. But the reality is that our model faces the same pressure that all of your models face at your business. If we don't have certain programs or certain activities, we can't in good conscience keep that money for salary, because we need to use it on the kids. And so I think that in the near term, we've been great at avoiding the inevitable, but you've been reading about all the furloughs around the city. It's inevitable and unpleasant. Hi.
I want to say I'm very happy to hear you talk about collaborating. I'm a board member at Pathfinders, and people do not understand what's going on with a lot of the kids. When you say safer at home, there's a lot of stuff going on that's not safer at home. So I guess my question is, how do you mend some of the police connections and that when you have to get people involved? Because you've got to be seeing things at the Boys and Girls Clubs that are just happening that shouldn't be.
So, you know, the Milwaukee Police Department, like many police departments today, are unpopular. Is that fair to say? A little unpopular. But we've always had a great relationship. I mean, a super relationship with the Milwaukee Police Department. And in fact, we've just had a new board member join, Ray Banks, who was the former assistant police chief of MPD. We have police officers that will come to our Fitzsimmons Club, Jill, and they come in their uniform and they play basketball with our kids just because they're on North Avenue and they want to pop in and say hi. So I think the question is, how do we balance this relationship building opportunity with a very unpopular group while also protecting the justice issues that are facing our kids. And it's a balancing act every single day. I don't believe in making knee-jerk declarative statements. I think they're irresponsible, quite frankly. We're not kicking anyone out of any buildings, but we do believe that holding people accountable is fair for our kids. But sometimes two things can be true at the same time.
Kathy, thank you for coming today. We appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule. You mentioned about upstream and getting opportunities to talk to our young children about their futures. And my question is, how upstream is upstream? So how early should those conversations begin? And what have you seen to be effective in encouraging this population to be involved or engaged in STEM and other opportunities that might help them down the road?
Yeah. So how soon is soon? We believe kindergarten, because for any former educators in the room, you know that the third grade is a big line of demarcation. How a child is performing in third grade really statistically can project whether that kid's going to graduate high school. Third grade, that's pretty early. So we believe that the intervention into the K-5 or the elementary population will yield the best fruit, both in terms of quality and magnitude. And so kindergarten, how many of you, when your kids were little, had career days where you would go to your kid's school and you tell all the little kids what you did? Anyone do that? Yeah. Would you imagine that doesn't happen anymore? So how's a child supposed to know what jobs are possible when no one's telling them what jobs are possible? So it could be something as simple as reinventing career days where stakeholders and people who love this kind of work, when we could do COVID, go into schools and you talk about what you do. Of course, the firemen and the policemen were always the most popular parent. Like nobody wanted to hear about retailing and selling shoes, but kids at least got exposed to those things. So that's number one, exposure. And number two, in this community, you punch above your weight class consistently. Milwaukee punches way above its weight class with regard to philanthropy. So companies like Rockwell Automation, Harley Davidson, they are wanting to build out these STEM labs and STEM centers for all kids because that's their future workforce. And if you ask the head of HR at Harley, what's her biggest concern? She's like, who's going to work the line in 15 years? And then you ask any other manufacturing CEO what his biggest concern is, and he's like, who's going to work the line in 15 years? Who's going to work construction, Darren, in 15 years?
Growing up, my parents sent me to summer camp for 6 years in a row, and it opened up a new world for me. So I love the summer camp of the Boys and Girls Club. It opens a new world for the Boys and Girls Club kids. You might tell the group about Camp Whitcomb Mason of the Boys and Girls Club.
Oh, Charlie, you always get the last punch. All right. So the Boys and Girls Clubs of Greater Milwaukee are very lucky to have a 300-acre camp in Heartland, Wisconsin, about 30 minutes away. And one of the things that we care about is getting kids out of the city in the summer to camp. I was a former camp counselor and lifeguard for most of my high school and college days. It's how I made money, with my own little kind of side hustle. But when you see kids get off the bus for the first time at the camp, the first thing is they're shocked just about the massive amount of space. Usually they're crying, quite frankly. They want to go home because they've not been out of the city before. But by about, Charlie, the second or third day, they are running through the field barefoot, catching fireflies, doing the jungle rope exercise, jumping in the lake, fishing, catching worms. Like all the things that kids grew up doing in the back days, and now they don't have a chance to do. And if you know anything about Milwaukee, the most dangerous time for kids in Milwaukee is the summer and the weekend and the evenings. And you put those three things together and you've got a tinderbox. So when Charlie talks about kids to camp is not just a life experience, it actually saves lives. Because Milwaukee is a dangerous place in the summer, on the weekends, and at night. And so our commitment is to get more kids to camp, which is something we're launching for this summer. And our camp is open right now with study camp. They're letting families come right now to camp and say, hey, drop your kids off in the morning. We'll feed them breakfast, lunch, and dinner, teach them something cool, get their homework done, and then you come pick them up. Brand new program. But camp is an integral part to the experience of how do you know what you don't know? How do you know how to catch a fish if you've never seen a worm or a hook? So, should I go? Good. Thank you. Thank you for having me. This was really a big treat. Seeing so many familiar faces in the crowd made it great. And congratulations on all the good work you guys are doing in the community. That's really meaningful. So we thank you.
Kathy, thank you so much for being here with us today. In honor of leaders like you who speak to our club, we will be making a donation in your name to the YWCA of Southeastern Wisconsin, whose mission is eliminating racism, empowering women, promoting peace, justice, freedom, and dignity for all. It is also time for our next book read and discussion series. We will be reading Things That Make White People Uncomfortable by Michael Bennett. He's a former Super Bowl champion and three-time Pro Bowl defensive end. Bennett adds his unmistakable voice to the discussions of racism and police violence, the role of protest in history, the responsibilities of athletes as role models to speak out about injustice. Conversations will be led by fellow Rotarian Paula Pennebaker. It will take place over 3 Wednesdays via Zoom from 4 p.m. till 5:30. There's more information and directions on signing up in your emails. For those of us who tuned in this Thursday last week to our snack program, we got some fall gardening tips from Melinda Myers. The program is now live on our YouTube channel, so be sure to check that out. This Thursday, we will welcome fellow Rotarian Sebastian May, and he will be discussing this year's Milwaukee Film Festival. Join us at 11:30 a.m. on Zoom to meet and socialize with your fellow Rotarians prior to the program starting. For those who are missing interaction with your fellow Rotarians, these informal Thursday programs are a great way to talk with one another, albeit on Zoom. I know I've enjoyed participating and learning more about the great things going on in Milwaukee and our community. Join us next Tuesday to hear from Megan McGee, Executive Director of Ex Fabula, who will share how they have connected in this new virtual world. If you parked in the parking lot today, and this is important, make sure you take a validation off of your table. That'll get you out of the gate when you leave. Also, make sure that you practice safe social distancing on your way out. Take the stairs if you're able. And Charlie, know that we are carrying your sorrow in our hearts. And thank you again for being here today. This meeting is adjourned.